Howdy, howdy, and welcome to Workshop Wednesday. It is January the 9th when we are recording this. I am loving that we're getting started off to the new year with some relatively new reports in Google Analytics, specifically these cross-device tracking reports. And we're going to talk about all the setup and everything else. Of course, before we dive in, introductions. My name is Chris Mercer. I do go by Mercer and the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io. And of course, you can see our content on such platforms as Digital Marketer, Conversion Excel, Social Media Examiner, Seriously Simple Marketing, and others around the web. With all of these workshops, one thing, one idea, one new takeaway is all you're looking for. There's a lot to these different reports, and especially in Google Analytics, it's easy to get overwhelmed if you try to digest everything at once and just dump right into the deep end. So instead of that, just take one new idea, maybe one new report or one new technique that you didn't think about, play around with that a little bit, then you come back, rewatch these, and then take the next new step. And that's how you actually integrate this information to be sure that you're actually learning it. Okay, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started now with our Getting Started cross-device tracking in Google Analytics. Now, as with all of these workshops, we're going to relate them to the 5 pillars of measurement marketing because that's the whole point. Number 1, plan. You've got to make sure you know what questions to ask, what information you're going to need, what you're going to do with that information. One of the questions you might want to start asking is, how are people interacting across different devices? Well, obviously, what we're going to talk about today will show you that. The build out, equally as important. This is where you're starting to use tools like Tag Manager or Google Analytics to make sure that you're actually measuring the different devices as they come across. And for the most part, this is kind of built in, but we're going to talk about how that works as well here. Then the reports. Well, obviously, we're going to show you reports, so you're actually going to be able to get the information, the answers that you're looking for in terms of your cross-device. In fact, we're going to talk about 2 different ways you're going to be able to do that. Then you can start to forecast. So once you have an idea of what is your sort of current benchmarks when it comes to how your users are interacting with your site, you can begin to forecast and you'll have an idea of, okay, maybe my mobile people are going to come in and become leads, but then they end up purchasing on desktop. And of the 100 that become leads on mobile, 60% come back and purchase on desktop, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you have your forecast in line, then you can optimize because you're going to measure against what your forecast was. That will tell you where you're hitting the mark and where you're not. And that's how the 5 pillars of measurement marketing here relate specifically to these cross-device reports that we're about to jump into. So let's go ahead and do exactly that. Now I'm going to pull up analytics, and we've got a number of different tabs opened up here. I'm just going to show you different stages of this. So number 1, where these reports are, we're currently in the Google Merchandise Store demo account. So we're going to go into audience. That's where these all are. And the reason is because audience reports are all about who are my visitors, right? What tech are they using? Where do they live? What are they into? What are their interests? All that sort of stuff, including in this case, what devices they're using. That's why the cross-device reports are under the audience, because they're all about the people, right? So in this case, we go to cross-device. Now notice what happens here. I'm going to click on any of these reports, and I get this little error that says, hey, I don't have permissions to see this. That's perfectly fine, because in this case, it's a read-only account that the merchandise store has allowed us to use, just like you can use as well. And so, we don't really have access to these particular reports. Now, why not? It's because if you go to the admin section here, and I'm going to show you how to set this up, and you go into tracking info, and we'll go into data collection. Now, again, I don't have permissions to change anything, but this is an older screen. This is actually the original settings. They actually haven't updated theirs to be able to use these cross-device reports. Now, what does that actually look like? Glad you asked. Here's what you should be seeing, and probably more than likely what you will see in your own. So let's assume here that you do not have the cross-device report set up properly. Well, if you come into cross-device, same exact report under audience, is just one of our other accounts. We're going to go to device overlap. You're going to see a message. This one's a little more helpful, right? So this says, okay, hey, you need to actually, in order to use these, you have to activate Google Signals. Now, this is something that was announced in 2018 that they came out with. About mid-2018 is when it started rolling out. And definitely by the end of 2018, everybody had access to this. So your account also has access to this. And this is a step of sort of opting into this program. You need to make sure that you tell Google Analytics, hey, I want to be a part of this. And so if you see this, that's what this is, this Google Signals. Now, what Google Signals is that's Google saying, we've got a bunch of people who are seeing our ads on the DoubleClick network and everything else, and they have ads personalization, easy for me to say, ads personalization turned on. And when they have ads personalization turned on, Google knows who they are as they bounce from device to device to device because it's personalizing their ad experience. And obviously, that's what most of us want on the web. We want to have a catered experience. We don't necessarily want to have something that all of the different sites don't know who we are every time. So that's sort of where this comes from. So what happens is you allow Google to connect into Google Analytics and start to share that information with you. Now, there are things that you need to do to make sure that you're maintaining privacy and integrity with your own audience. So make sure you click on the learn more about Google Signals in terms of the privacy statements and things like that that you might need to adjust for your own site. But assuming you've taken advantage of that, you just click on continue and you've got everything in place. Click on continue. It's a fairly quick setup to opt in. Now, what I want to show you is in the back end. So again, this account does not have it set up. What the back end will look like under data collection is you will see this. And you can see they're really making this apparent. So it's not something you have to dig around for. You will see this. At the very least, if you're in the back end, you'll see this. And then, of course, you see this sort of old screen, because this is what it used to be, the remarketing and advertising reporting features. Now, these don't stop working. So you don't have to do Google Signals if you don't want to, or if your company doesn't want you to. So you can keep out of it. But you will not have the cross-device reports, at least not the built-in versions. You can still customize them, and I'll show you that in a little bit here too. But you won't have the sort of built-in automated cross-device reports that Google is now offering, unless you go into Google Signals. So it's absolutely necessary to do that. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip through to a new tab, and I'm gonna go into, this is our measurement marketing site. We're gonna go to admin. And before we go into the reports, I want to show you the actual setup itself. So in tracking code, notice the difference between these two. So this is, tracking code, tracking data collection. That's what I wanted. Now it says data collection for Google Signals, and you've activated it, and you notice the other stuff is gone. I'm going to flip through. This is the old one with the remarketing and advertising reporting features. This is what it used to be, that you had to connect in to get demographic data and everything else. Now it looks like this. So if you come into your site and it looks like this in the back end, well, that's because it's turned on. So you now know that Google Signals is turned on. Now, where does that leave you? It leaves you with these reports. So I'm going to click in and I'm going to show you some of these. So again, under audience, we're going to go to cross device, and then we're going to click through these to kind of give you an overview. Now, here's what I found interesting about these reports. Remember, this is Google's, I would always assume, sort of best guess, right? It's not, don't think accuracy. It's always dangerous in Google Analytics to think in terms of accuracy, but definitely think in terms of usefulness. So I've got my date range here from the 1st until the 8th. Also, interesting little side note, the date range, just sort of widgets are a lot more different. These reports are a lot different than what other reports are in Google Analytics, and could signal maybe a change to the user interface coming through later this year. You never know. But in this case, it shows me this segment of all users. Notice you cannot segment anything else here, but I've got my segment of all users. I've got my device categories, and I can choose different device categories, OS, etc. And as I have that information coming through, right, I'm breaking it down. I've got my Windows and Mac. So I've got my users, my sessions, and then you can start adjusting. And all of the reports kind of work like this, where you can adjust to a certain result. So by e-commerce is going to be default. This is very similar to the options that are available in your source medium reports when you're tracking your traffic attribution. But here I can say all goals or only certain goals, and I can click on a specific goal. It is a little slow. My guess is obviously it'll get faster with time, but you can see here as I make a goal and chat for about 10 seconds, then it flips back, but it does pop up. So you might have an issue of a little slowness. Just know it's more probably because it's the beta and they're working on it all the time. But you can see here, so my desktop Windows and what their conversion rate is versus the Macintosh and what their conversion rate is. So you can probably get some pretty quick insights just in that. Now, the reason I say it's interesting is because I just showed desktop. Now, this is a thing you must turn on. We talked about it with Google Signals. You have to enable Google Signals first. As soon as you do that, and for us, we did it reasonably soon after we got access to it. But for us, I want to say it's probably 30 or 45 days worth of data. So all it's showing right now is that we have desktop people only, and that nobody's really hitting the page on a mobile phone. Now, for various reasons, we know that's not true. I can go to the devices and I can see phones and everything else lighting up. So that just leads me to believe that those people either didn't have ads personalization turned on or something like that. And this is one of those things where in the beginning, take this with a grain of salt, right? Just look for truth is in the trend, power is in the pattern. Look for some outlier stuff. Look for something that might be interesting, but don't take this and say this is the holy word of devices, right? This is just an idea. The more data that you have back here, the more useful truth you will actually see with this, and it will become more and more useful. But even if you're just starting out, it is very useful as a next step to get used to these reports and what types of things that they give you access to, so you can ask better questions when you're building your measurement marketing plans. So in this case, you can see device category and then broken down by OS, and then of course, whatever result that we're looking for. You also have device paths. Now, this is also kind of interesting. I think, again, for us, it's going to be fairly limited because it's just showing that we have desktop stuff right now. But you can see here in this little device category, and these are not all that intuitive that you can click on them. So, but when you click on them, you can see you have, channel, campaign, media, medium, OS. So I can start saying, okay, well, I want to see my device category. So not just desktop, but desktop broken down, right? So in this case, by Windows and Macintosh, or, by source of traffic that I've got, or whatever it is. And you can start getting an idea of not just the device itself, but how the device and the operating system, or the device and the source of traffic, or the device and the campaign, which I think is particularly interesting. If you were trying to track through different campaigns, this is the way to do it, along with the device they were on. And what would happen is it would show something like desktop Windows, and then it might say mobile Safari, right? Something like that as another path. And you actually start to get an actual path laid out, very similar to the multi-channel funnel reports that exist in Google Analytics. And again, you can compare to a specific result, change it from e-commerce to whatever you want in terms of goals. So you have that option as well. Channels, pretty much like it says, it's very similar to the channel report, with the only default here, you've got your default channel grouping, but you can also pull out source medium, whatever else comes through. So in our case, a lot of direct none. And keep in mind, the way that this report works, when you first start getting your data, when you first turn it on, you're going to see a lot of direct none, because a lot of the users don't have a traffic source necessarily associated to them that just start coming, especially if you're coming back to your site over and over again, like we have with our member site with the Measurement Marketing Academy. We get a lot of direct traffic. So those people are all going to be direct none. You may see a spike in direct none, at least in the very beginning when you turn on signals. And then again, after a while, the data gets cleaner. But immediately, it's not going to be all that useful. It's just with time, it becomes more useful. So at the very least, get in here, poke around, understand what is available to you. And then we've got acquisition device. An acquisition device, theoretically, is what you're using to actually acquire a user. And again, you can break those down by various categories. You will also run into this occasionally. So if you see this, sometimes a little refresh works. Sometimes it doesn't. So, and I think it's interesting because I have seen this and this is why I think it's more error sometimes. I have seen this work for all of the reports, and then it doesn't work for one particular report for some reason. And sometimes it's not always the same one. So here we got acquisition device. At least I have desktop up here. I just don't have details down here for whatever reason. But needless to say, again, we're fairly low traffic. And for us, most of our traffic is desktop. But with time, I would imagine this report would get more and more useful, and I'd be able to see the different categories of devices as they come through with desktop, mobile, tablet, and then, of course, accordingly, what their actual results are that they're producing for me. So, and again, you can click through here and see your different goals. Now, that's the built-in cross-device tracking that comes with Google Analytics, now standard, as long as you turn on Google Signals, and then just sort of let Google handle everything. There is a completely different set of cross-device reports, which are these. These are kind of the quote-unquote original device reports, and these are customized. You have to set up user ID tracking for this. Now, we've done this on our site, so that's why we have these reports, and they are definitely different. So you can see here, if I click on device overlap, and this is what I think is interesting, because this is the same account, just with two different views. This view has the regular cross-device reports. This view has the user ID reports that are associated to it, device overlap. Same date range, except this one shows me I've got mobile and desktop and tablet, and it's tracking through the actual user IDs. So from a quote-unquote accuracy, and again, I hate the A word when it comes to analytics. I don't think it's overly important to be accurate. I want it to be more useful. That's what I really care about. But this report actually is more useful because this shows me, because of how I'm setting it up and our logged in users that we're passing through details on, I can see most people are coming in through desktop. There's a tiny bit through mobile, a very small amount through tablet. I can scroll down to the bottom and I can see that, how people are actually coming through. And obviously for us, the majority is desktop. It makes sense, especially with the Measurement Marketing Academy, because most of our transactions and things like that are happening on there, and the videos and the education that we do is definitely delivered more on a desktop experience. It's really made for that. So, but the idea is you've got this device overlap report, old version, device overlap report, new version. And the old version, I kind of like better. It seems like I can segment it. I can do a little bit more things with it. And I know how the information got there. I'm not relying on kind of the black box of Google Signals, which I do not think is bad to have this. I would still activate this. Obviously, we have on other views. But if you are deciding like, well, I was going to do the traditional user ID tracking, but instead of that, which does require work, it requires working a lot of times with your developers, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to integrate most of the time. Tag Manager makes it a lot easier, but this way is more difficult to integrate. But I think it'll give you a more useful truth if you can. And then you also have other views that don't have user ID tracking and can use the built-in Google Signals so that you can get kind of their version of the truth. And again, with more time, I would imagine this reporting will get a more useful. So you also have device paths. And you can see here a little more detailed picture of what a device path might look like. So this is kind of, people going tablet and desktop back and forth. This one particular user did. We've got all ones came just on desktop. Here's people that are bouncing, back and forth on their certain sessions. So you have the same information available to you. It's just more of the older user interface style. And I still have acquisition device. So that's telling me how I'm actually acquiring these users and what the originating device was. And I still have access to everything. Now, the thing I don't have access to is being able to pull down goals and things like that. Like I can still segment and say, I want to see people that in this session created a goal, right? I could do that and segment this down. So this report's not as easy to interact with, I think, as like this report is. Because their acquisition device, I have this drop down on everything, which I think is great. I think this is huge. I love this little widget that they have. So the more that this is around the reports, I think it's better for analytics because it's easier for all of us to actually figure out what's going on when we can flip around the different results that we're looking for. So I love the reports for this. And then also know that your channels report, you don't have the channels report in your cross-device reports on this old one. So if you come into your cross-device reports and you see just these three, know that you have done a customized user ID setup. The way that you can also kind of verify that is if you come into your admin section, we can go into your view settings, and I believe we come down and we can see there it is, user ID reports enabled. So you can see that. And if I go to another view, I should see user ID reports that are not enabled. See this? It says user ID reports disabled. So this particular review, or view setting, I should say, does not have user ID reporting, which is completely different from Google Signals. So two completely different things. So the Google Analytics still has user ID tracking. It is a slightly more advanced topic. If you're a Measurement Marketing Academy member, we have lots of resources and workshops on how to set up user ID tracking. And of course, the instructors are there to help you out as well for that setup if you need it. But so know that you can do it. And in the same property, so I've got the same property here, I can have different views. One view is the old way with signals, and I can make, even though signals is a property level setting, you can see it's under the property with data collection. So even though I set it for the property, it's almost like when I set up a user ID view with user ID tracking, it sort of overrides the signals and starts taking what I feed it instead as user IDs, which again, I think gives you just a different version of the truth that for me is a little bit more useful right now, because especially when you can compare apples to apples. Now, again, with enough time, but these two reports might start looking a little bit better, right? With the Google Signals coming in and getting a little bit more information than maybe what the user ID tracking is, because the user ID tracking only tracks people with user IDs, your logged in users, and then the Google Signals theoretically is anybody. It's a bigger circle, so it should be a little bit more relevant. So we'll see. With time, time will tell. And yours is going to be the same way. As soon as you turn this on, as soon as you turn on Google Signals, it starts collecting data, so it doesn't retro back in time. In fact, neither one of these do. The user ID the old way, or the user ID, these user ID old versions of the cross-device tracking, or the new way. It doesn't matter. They're both going to start. As soon as you set them up, that's when they actually start collecting data. So either way, you need to get started sooner than later to make sure that you get the information that you are looking for. But hopefully, with this Getting Started workshop, you've at least gotten the idea that, number one, these things exist, that there's a couple different versions of them. One's a lot simpler to start, which is basically opting into Google Signals and obviously making sure you're in compliance with everything as much as you can and that you're comfortable with that. Then you have your cross-device reports. They're automated. Google takes care of it all. Now, they may not be as useful in the beginning. They need a lot of time, and with more data, they become a lot more useful. So I wouldn't judge them right away. Wait at least 30 days, but you probably will need more than that to get a really decent sample of what's going on, unless you're a usually high traffic site, and then of course more power to you. The other option you have is user ID tracking, which is the older style, and it sort of overrides the Google Signal reports with these older versions of the reports. But for me, they're a little bit more useful. I control the user ID settings. I know when a user's logged in, so I can actually pass through that information at that point. And so I know how the data gets there. So for me, it's a little more, I know those numbers better because I put those numbers there. The Google Signals one is like, a sample of a sample. So both are useful, and I would still have both and compare both. If you do not have the technical skill set to do the user ID tracking, then don't worry about it right now. Just do the Google Signals end of things, because that's better than nothing, right? At least you get some idea of your cross-device tracking. And you can always set up something like Facebook Analytics and go into Facebook Analytics and take a look at that those reports that they have that talk about cross-device as well. So there's other platforms out there that will help you to investigate that question. But ideally, you got at least one new thing from this workshop. And again, once you've taken action on something, go back. Watch this workshop again. You will see something different, and then you take action on that next thing. And you continuously build your skill sets one step at a time. Now, if you need a better way to know your numbers, we talked about the Measurement Marketing Academy a few times here. Measure.tips/start will take you there. Lots of support. Workshops on just about every topic you can imagine. Our instructors are back there. If you have a question, you just click on Ask an Instructor. A little box pops up. You can pop in videos and screenshots and whatever else you need. The instructors, half the time, fire back videos and screenshots of their own to really help you get unstuck and on the way. And there's also every single Wednesday, a member-only Q&A. So if you are already a member, thank you, of course. And every Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, we have the Measurement Marketing Academy office hours member Q&A. So any of the members pop in there. You can ask questions. They always end up turning into like these little mini masterminds for about an hour or so. So some people are asking beginner stuff, which is great because they're just getting started out and everybody wants to help them. And others are a little bit further ahead in their journey, or they have a little bit more complicated sites and questions. And it's just fascinating, the conversations that we have back there each and every week. So the Measurement Marketing Academy office hours, again, if you're an Academy member, be sure to join us there. And if you are not yet an Academy member, be sure to check out the Measurement Marketing Academy. All right, next week's topic. So we flip topics every single week. We do beginners topics. Next week's a little bit more advanced. For those of you who have got a little bit more experience, we're going to be doing some pretty cool things with Tag Manager, specifically tracking shopping cart errors using Google Tag Manager. And with any luck, the way that we're going to show this to you, it really doesn't matter what your cart is, as long as you can get Google Tag Manager on it. You'll be able to track errors. At least that's what we're hoping is going to happen. So beyond the basics next week, tracking shopping cart errors using Google Tag Manager. Now, if you are not yet a part of Workshop Wednesday, it is currently free. We do not make all of the workshops public. We do make certain workshops public throughout the month, but the vast majority of them we do not do that for. So if you want access to these workshops, you want to make sure that you know when the workshops are coming out, that you have access and you can watch these replays each and every week. Make sure you join Workshop Wednesday. Measure.tips/WW. Again, it is currently free, so take advantage of it while it still is. Measure.tips/WW, and then it will put you on the Workshop Wednesday list so that you can get next week's workshop and the workshops after that and after that. All right, that is it. Brings us to a close. Thank you for watching Getting Started, Cross-Device Tracking in Google Analytics. I appreciate you watching this workshop, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.